We'll be back in 5 minutes to start off with Mike Farris here on Wallbuilders Live.
And one of the tools for self-defense that the Founding Fathers gave to the states to help enforce the 10th Amendment was Article 5. And that notion of convention of the states, and I'm going to make a big distinction tonight, because you and I have talked about this before, but you and I both, 3 years ago, were opposed to this.
Totally, yeah.
I mean, we were opposed, and a
worried
lot
about what could happen, all the reasons, and
Well, in my case, it was because I'd been told about Article 5. I hadn't read Article 5.
Yeah.
And so Article 5, I've always heard, well, that's about a constitutional convention. I don't want a constitutional convention, no.
And I don't want them starting over.
That's right.
I don't want to,
that's
the
right.
whole thing out and start over.
And I'm not, and so tonight, I'm not going to call it a constitutional convention because it's not. It's a convention of these states.
And I used to make that mistake. I even would do that in constitution classes I'd be teaching. I'd use that word, constitutional convention, and somebody corrected me and said, wait a minute, that means we're starting over and doing it all over again. This is not a constitutional convention. Our guest tonight, I think, has really helped to frame the right terminology, convention of states.
And I'll tell you what really got me was when you see Article 5, and it's there on the screen in front of you, the slide that you see, it says that you can, in the middle of there, it says the several states shall call a convention for proposing amendments as part of this Constitution. That means you can't have a runaway convention that comes up with a new Constitution. You can propose amendments to this Constitution. We can't propose a new Constitution. That can be done elsewhere, another way. But a convention of the states can't do that. They can propose amendments to this Constitution. So that's the first check on a runaway Constitution, or runaway convention, is the Constitution language itself. Yeah. And I had never read that.
Let me jump to one of our questions from the audience, Mike, if we can. This one's from Paul. He says, the reactions from people concerning the Article 5 Convention is polarized. I'm inclined to want to explore the potential simply because the framers bothered to include it in the Constitution, and as a free people, we're at the precipice. So agreeing with you that we are in danger. But he said it causes me great consternation to know that George Soros is enthusiastic about an Article 5 Convention. What could devious statists possibly have in mind that would attract them to this approach? Should we assume that any strategy we devise must include the presumption that a fifth column attack to subvert the Constitution is inevitable? So I hear this one, why are left-wingers and socialists wanting a convention of the states, which I haven't heard of that many of them, but I have heard this claim that Soros would like to see one.
Mic check!
Mic check!
I'm Jake Uger.
I'm Jake Uger!
Of the Young Turks.
Of the Young Turks!
I have an announcement.
I have an announcement.
Tonight, we're going to start a fight. To take back our democracy. In this fight, we need leaders. We need organizers. We need you. We want an army. To fight for an amendment. To declare. Corporations are not people.
Corporations are not people.
They can no longer buy our politicians. We want to occupy the states. To demand that the states call for a constitutional convention. Please help us. Fight the machines. Tonight, the battle is joined. From now on, they're not coming for us. We're coming for them. If you want to help, go to new website, wolf-pack.com.
I have a Wolfpack update. A dramatic Wolfpack update. We're coming, man. Now look, I told you last week about Idaho and Kentucky. Did I just say Idaho and Kentucky? I mean, those are some pretty red states. How in the world are we going to get resolutions introduced to get a convention to call for an amendment to get money out of politics in Idaho and Kentucky? You know how we do it? By trying.
What's your response to that?
Well, if George Soros can get 34 states to pass an application that supports his agenda, he would have the ability to back a successful convention of the states thing. So George Soros, his empire is big cities, big government, and big media. He has a lot of power in Washington, D.C., has very little power in most of the states, and we can win. This is where the people control. I'm not afraid of George Soros. I'm not afraid of the ACLU. I'm not afraid of President Obama or Harry Reid or Nancy Pelosi. The people ultimately control this.
Why do you think that they would follow any amendments that came out of a convention of states?
Well, there's two constitutions. It's not exactly accurate. While I agree with the sentiment of this person, it's not exactly accurate to say that they don't follow the Constitution. They follow the wrong Constitution. They're following the Constitution as interpreted by the Supreme Court rather than the Constitution as written. One of the amendments that we certainly need to address is changing the nature of the Supreme Court. And the European Court of Human Rights gives us a really good idea of how to fix the U.S. Supreme Court. That court has 46 countries. They have 46 judges. Every country appoints one judge for a limited time, and they sit in panels of 9 normally. Now, they do have a procedure that in rare cases, all 46 judges can participate in writing in a case. And there's no reason we can't do that for the Supreme Court.
Mike, let's talk about some of the action out there. We've got 2 questions regarding this in individual states. The first one from the state of Washington. It says, we get some info on this from Freedom Foundation, but no status of Washington State's participation in taking action as of yet. Do you have any inside information about this? And Mike, I think on your website you can click on a state, right, and find out what's happening in that particular state or somehow get involved in that particular state?
You sure can. Yeah, so the website to come to is conventionofstates.com. We definitely have plans for Washington State, but it's one of the more liberal states that are actually in our plans. Next year, we're going to be focused on about 20 states. This year, our application, in our very first effort, passed in Georgia, Florida, Alaska, all the way through. Those states are complete for phase 1. We got it halfway through. We got through the House of Representatives in both Alabama and Arizona. A senator in Arizona that his mother-in-law was the head of Eagle Forum for the state, so we had a mother-in-law problem. But we're going to come back. we're going to come back with a vengeance next year in Arizona, and we're going to win in Arizona. But our goal is to pass it in 20 more states in 2015 legislative session, and then to clean it up and get to 34 states in 2016 and begin the Convention of States sometime in the fall of 2016. What I meant earlier by we might not get everything we want is I really would like about 7 amendments. Phyllis, for example, supports an amendment that's in Congress. In fact, you guys support the amendment in Congress that I've been the lead draftsman of, and that's the Parental Rights Amendment.
Ultimately sponsored by Michael Farris. So it has 4 provisions that are of interest here. The first one just says that the liberty of parents to direct the upbringing, education, care of the children is a fundamental right. Well, we know that already. It's part of the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, Declaration of Independence. Then it goes on and specifies that that particular right includes the right to choose public, private, religious, or home schools, and to make reasonable choices within public schools for one's child. Now that's interesting, to make reasonable choices, because the suggestion then becomes if someone thinks that the choice is not reasonable, then this right doesn't exist to that extent.
And who determines
and
what?
And the question is, yes, and who is going to determine that? Well, we would have to assume the first place it would be the parent, but the parent could be overruled by some state agency. Right? We have those agencies already in place, the Child Protective Services agencies, the schools, of course, public schools. Then he goes on, Section 3, neither the United States nor any state shall infringe these rights. Would have been nice if it stopped there. But it goes on to say, without demonstrating that its governmental interest as applied to the person is of the highest order and not otherwise served. Well, that puts these rights entirely at the control of whom?
The government.
Of the government, in some way. Legislatures could pass statutes dealing with these questions. Administrative agencies, public schools, child protective services, ultimately the courts. Now, what interests me about this particular provision is that it constitutionalizes the Supreme Court's so-called compelling state interest theory. That if the government has a compelling interest and it exercises its authority in the least restrictive way, it can violate essentially any right that an individual claims. Well, that has always been a judicial doctrine, a false judicial doctrine, and one that could have been overturned at any point in time by the legislature. Now it's been made a constitutional doctrine. And what's interesting about it is, of course, it's totally non-scientific. The governmental interest is of the highest order. Measured how?
By whom?
Well, by whom, of course, but measured how? Assuming that we can find someone to do it. How is he going to measure this, right? So this person's decision, or that person's decision, the legislature or the court, or 2 justices on the Supreme Court, it's non-verifiable and it's non-falsifiable because there's no standard. It's in the eye of the beholder, like beauty or ugliness, whichever. Right? And then it says, well, the governmental interest cannot be otherwise served. What's the criterion for determining that? Otherwise served to what degree? At what expense? And on we go. This is a very dangerous provision.
And let's reiterate something here too, Mike. The 1 vote per state. You mentioned it earlier. You already went over it, but I just want to reiterate that because some people think, well, yeah, but what if California sends 50 people and they outvote everybody there? Each state gets 1 vote, no matter how many delegates, commissioners, whatever we call them, actually come to the convention, right?
That's exactly right. And so, and you know, if a liberal state doesn't want to participate, yay and amen. That's fine. You know, stay home. That's right, job easier. You know, who wouldn't want to eat tofu sandwiches anyway?
We named it Wolfpack.
We named it Wolfpack.
Because we're coming for them.
Because we're coming for them.
Because sometimes what you need is not a change of personnel, you need a change of structure.